والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اهتدى بهداه أما بعد. We continue بإذن الله تعالى with the explanation of Kitab Al-Iman, the book of Iman from Sahih Muslim. And we have currently been going through some of the hadiths that Imam Muslim rahimahullah has put in this book regarding some of the major sins and the wa'id, the punishment that has been promised for them. And tonight we take the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, who narrated on the authority of Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, there are three people who Allah would not speak to on the day of resurrection, nor would He look towards them, nor would He purify them, and there would be a tormenting punishment for them. So three people who Allah does not look at them, does not speak to them, does not purify them, and they have a painful punishment. He then said, a person who in the waterless desert has more water than his need and he refuses to give it to the traveler. So a person in a waterless desert who has more water than he needs and he refuses to give water to the traveler. And a person who sold a commodity to another person in the afternoon and took an oath by Allah that he had bought it at such and such a price, and the buyer accepted it to be true though it was not true. So he lied when he sold his commodity. He said, and a person who pledged allegiance to the Imam but for the sake of worldly gains. A person who pledged allegiance to the Imam but for the sake of the dunya, worldly gains. If the Imam bestowed on him something of the worldly riches, he stood by his allegiance and upheld it. And if the Imam did not give him, he did not fulfill the allegiance. So these are three types of sinners who have been promised this punishment. Imam Muslim then mentions another narration, also from Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, three people who Allah would neither speak to on the day of resurrection nor look at them, and there would be a painful punishment for them. He then said, a person who took an oath on the goods of a Muslim in the afternoon and then he broke it. So this is an extra riwayah or narration from the previous hadith. Now, first and foremost, the lessons that we benefit from this hadith, the shurrah, the explainers of the hadith, have said that the water here is water that is not owned. Regarding the man in a waterless desert who has more than enough water for himself and then he refuses to give it to the traveler, the ulama said this is regarding water that is not owned. So even the man that has more than enough water for himself, he doesn't own that water, but he's still preventing to give some to a traveler. So if he prevents others, if the person prevents others while he himself doesn't own the water and he has already taken his need from it, then he falls in the warning of this hadith. Okay? That's the condition. But this specification requires proof because the hadith is general. So some of the ulama said regardless if the water is owned by the person or not. If you have plenty of water and the traveler comes, it's his right to take some. It's his right to take some even if you own the water. And that's why the ulama said the right of the traveler from water is what is needed according to the norm. That's the haqq of the traveler. So if you have a well or you own water or whatever it is, okay, and you have a lot and plenty, and a traveler passes by and he requests some of that water, it's his haqq. The traveler has the right to the water, and his haqq is what is enough for him, according to the norm. So we don't say his haqq is a truckload, but what's sufficient and enough for him to get and move, continue in his travel. So according to the norm, anything beyond that, anything beyond what is sufficient, the owner of the well can prevent him or charge him for it. Anything beyond what is needed, the owner of the land can prevent him or he can charge him for the extra water. There's no harm. Now, the next hadith is the hadith of Abu Hurairah, again radiyallahu anhu, who narrated and said, he who killed himself with a steel weapon, a hadida, he who kills himself with a steel weapon would be the eternal dweller of hellfire, and he would have that weapon in his hand and he would be thrusting it in his stomach forever and ever. Whoever kills himself with a knife or a metal, then he will be from the dwellers of hellfire, and he will be killing himself with that same steel forever and ever. As the Prophet ﷺ said. He then said, and he who drank poison and killed himself would will drink that poison in the fire of hell, where he is doomed forever and ever. And he who killed himself by falling from the top of a mountain, he who killed himself by falling from the top of a mountain would constantly fall in the fire of hell and would abide there forever and ever. Now this hadith, my dear brothers, the ulama of Islam have explained it according to the aqeedah of Ahl Sunnah. And it is crucial. This hadith is a great example that teaches us as to why we do not explain the Quran and the Sunnah from ourselves. Because if we explain the Quran and the Sunnah from ourselves without going back to the early generations, the first 3 generations, then we will come up with incorrect explanations. So you never interpret the verses of Allah or the hadiths of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam except from the noble ulama of the past. And by the past we mean the 3 generations in particular, because they were the best of generations, known as as-salafus salih. So this hadith, we have a number of lessons. Number 1, suicide is from the worst of sins, and it is from the most major of sins, which has a severe warning. Committing suicide is from the worst and the most major of sins. We have previously learned from the Quran and the Sunnah and the Salaf that the major sinner does not abide in hellfire forever if he has tawheed. This is a fundamental part of Aqeedah which we never ever abandon. If a person has tawheed, no matter what the sin is, even if it is suicide, they will never abide in hellfire forever, for eternity. And we do not find anyone from the Salaf who made any exception to this principle regarding any major sin. None of the Salaf made a single exception. Not murder, not suicide, not alcohol, not zina, not riba, nothing. Every major sin will not earn a person hellfire for eternity if the person has tawheed. Yes, they may be punished for it, but they will eventually exit and enter Jannah if they are people of tawheed, Muslims. So regarding the wording in this hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ said about the one who commits suicide, that he or she is in hellfire forever, the scholars gave a number of explanations to what this means. From them are those who said it is an expression to indicate a very long time, and it does not mean forever, for eternity. It means a very long time. This is how some of the scholars interpreted the wording of this hadith. Some said it means the one who believes it to be halal. Whoever believes suicide is halal, then they are in hellfire for eternity and never exit. And there's no doubt that that understanding is true. Whoever believes something to be halal which Allah has made haram disbelieves. He's not a Muslim. This is called al-istihlal. To make halal what Allah made haram is kufr and major shirk. And the ulama said the best response to this is what Imam Al-Tirmidhi rahimahullah said. Imam Al-Tirmidhi, the famous Imam, Sahib Al-Sunan, the famous author of Sunan Al-Tirmidhi, he mentioned that this wording in this particular narration, meaning the wording where the Prophet ﷺ said forever and ever, Imam Al-Tirmidhi said this narration is waham. And waham is a form of weakness in hadith. And he explained why, Imam Al-Tirmidhi. Since the hadith came from 3 chains, this hadith, my brothers, it came on 3 chains. Not one, not just this one, it's come on 3 chains. And this wording, where he said forever and ever, is only found in this one. This wording of forever and ever is only found in this narration, subhanallah, in Sahih Muslim. And do not be shocked that there can be a weak narration in Sahih Muslim. The hadith is Sahih, but that particular wording in the hadith is waham. It's like a mistake. Because the other 2 chains of the same hadith did not mention forever and ever, and since that is the case, it ends the debate. It ends the debate. We also benefit from this hadith that Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah used this hadith as proof that it is forbidden to use poison as a medicine. It is forbidden to use poison as a medicine because of this hadith, because there is a warning against the one who drinks poison in it. Al-Qadi Iyad rahimahullah, one of the big imams, he also used this hadith as proof to state that the qisas for the murderer, and the qisas means the retribution. You know how in Islam you have eye for an eye. Under the Sharia law, if someone murders someone, then it is the right of the family to seek retribution and have the murderer executed. Or they can accept blood money instead, or they can forgive if they choose. Now we know under the Sharia when someone commits murder and the retribution, the qisas is applied to them, meaning that they are to be executed for the crime of murder. In this day and age, and what is the norm, is that they are executed according to the sword, with the sword striking them over the neck. Al-Qadi Iyad and some of the other ulama, they use this hadith as an evidence for them to say that the murderer is executed the same way he committed the murder. Naam, some of the ulama said that. Where did they derive that from? They said because when the person commits suicide and takes his own soul, Allah punishes him in the same way. He drank poison, so Allah punishes him by making him drink poison. If he stabbed himself with a steel or a knife, Allah punishes him until the day of judgment with that same punishment. But some of the ulama, they said that the murderer is executed under the Sharia the same way that he committed the murder. But Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah and Ibn Hajar and others, they said this is a weak opinion. This is a weak opinion and Allah knows best. We then have the hadith of Thabit ibn Dhahhak, who reported that he pledged allegiance to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam under the tree. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he who took an oath of a religion other than Islam in the state of being a liar would become so, as he professed. And he who killed himself with a thing would be punished on the day of resurrection with that very thing. And one is not obliged to offer votive offering of a thing which is not in his possession. He then mentions another narration. He who took an oath on a religion other than Islam as a liar would become so as he said, and he who slaughtered or killed himself with a thing would be slaughtered with that on the day of resurrection. So this hadith, my dear brothers, it also teaches us a number of major sins and their punishments. We learn from it the severe warning against making oaths by another millah other than Islam. Making oaths by a millah, a religion other than Islam, is a major sin. And what does this mean? For example, for a person to say, if I speak to such and such a person, then I am a Jew. Or if I speak to such and such a person, or if I do this thing, then I'm a Christian. It's a form of an oath. He says it so that he's not going to do that thing. So regarding this type of oath, the person does not leave the fold of Islam if his intention is not to leave the religion and become a Jew or a Christian. He does not leave the fold of Islam if a person says, if I do this again, then I'm a Jew. If his intention is not to become a Jew or a Christian or another religion, he does not leave the fold of Islam. That's consensus by the scholars. But it is a major sin to make an oath like that. But if his intention is to actually leave and become part of the other millah, if his intention is that, then he disbelieves. Just for that intention. He disbelieves for that reason. The hadith also teaches us that whoever kills himself with something will be punished with it on the day of resurrection. Just like the previous hadith. And it was some of the Malikiyah who used it as evidence that the murderer is executed in the same way he murdered, as we just mentioned. That was the opinion of some of the Malikis, and other scholars rejected this. We also benefit from this hadith. It is invalid to make an oath over something that a person does not possess. You can't make an oath over something that you don't own. By Allah, if this happens, I'll give $1 million and I don't have $1 million. You can't. This is foolishness. And the one who does an oath for something he doesn't own, there is nothing upon him, but he commits the sin. We also learn the severity of cursing a believer, because in the narration of this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, cursing the believer is like killing him. And this shows the severity in the prohibition. It does not mean they are the same. Because obviously killing a Muslim is much worse than cursing him. But when the Prophet ﷺ said cursing the Muslim or the believer is like killing him, meaning the way that is severely prohibited, this is also severely prohibited. But it does not mean the sins are the same. And we also benefit that the one who made false claims to increase wealth has committed a major sin. Whoever makes false claims in order to increase his wealth, like he's selling something or buying something or whatever else, and he lies in order to increase in his wealth, has committed the major sin and falls under this hadith. And insha'Allah we will continue in our next lesson bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Mohamad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Are there any questions?